Welcome to Rauta. This video is done in commercial collaboration with our sponsor, Steelfest. Welcome to Rauta and Underground Trio Episode 2. This format replaced Indie 5 recently in case you missed the news about it, and instead of 5 releases it's gonna be 3. And this time it's not alphabetical order but from worst to best. If you allow me to do that, of course, matters of opinion, well, they're just opinions, man. But this is my ranking for these 3 individuals here, and as Underground Trio goes, it's maximum of 2 albums per band. That is, anything beyond that goes to normal reviews. So these are the ones that haven't really, broken the barrier, as the saying goes. I don't know if there's a saying about that, but who cares? Now it is. First we'll go to Poland with a band or solo project known as Temple of Decay. Here Metal Archive site it's listed as black slash death metal, which I think is very descriptive given that there's only one EP out and this first album Rigor Mortis that came out in 2022 spring. And to be honest, my initial feeling is this starts with a budget version of Marduk. Then it kind of evolves, including parts of cheap-ass version of Destroyer 666 with the guitar leads and all that stuff, and overall kind of summing up things like the kind of bulk version of Behemoth. So death and black metal all combined, with a little bit of those guitar leads right there to just season up the mix. Now, nothing this would be wrong if it wasn't for having this kind of a cheap-ass version, the kind of a budget thing going on, like blinking lights saying like, yeah, if you cannot afford the real deal, this is a kind of a copycat version or it's kind of a wannabe version of those bands, which you can just get for half the price. I mean, you all know, assuming you do groceries after all, that when you have this local store and you're like thinking like, okay, I need some tuna, I need some spaghetti and the kind of stuff. You just go for the grocery store owns brand more often than not, I assume, because you figure out it doesn't really matter if you could just kind of get the bulk version instead of this, big brand thing, which is twice the price. But when we are talking about music, especially if you're not buying the CDs and vinyl, we just go for the streaming services, it doesn't really cost more than the real deal. And as such, I find hard time liking Temple of Decay, at least his particular album, much more than because it just seems like a demo version of all those bands put together, stir and shaken and all that stuff, and then you're like, here it is, out in the mix. Now, this album comes only with some 30 minutes, so it's pretty quickly to just go through once in case you want to doubt my words, because after all, it's just my opinion, and who knows, you might actually like this a lot. But for me, it sounds like, yeah, I get it why this band has taken the name from, I guess, Marduk album at least. I mean, there's a song by Marduk called Temple of Decay, and yeah, it starts like there is an aggression and all that stuff, but all the riffs are kind of very basic, very generic. The production isn't really good, and the drums, I would say they are drum machine. If they are played by a human being, well, fuck, they need better production. They're not that good. It's not like they annoy me, but it just sounds like you went to a rehearsal room and because you want to save some money and time, maybe both, you just wanted to get it over with. I mean, by the time a single person is already fed up with the project, I mean, having spent hundreds of hours, I hope more than that, rather than just quick 10 hours, making the songs, honing and then playing the instruments. And by the time you're ready to record it all by yourself, you must be so fed up with the music that you just want to get it done with, get it over with. The result is like Yeah, it sounds like that. It sounds like a demo where you are like bored after doing guitars and vocals and bass and all that stuff, and you're just like, I have to get this shit out of my system. And the result is album like Rigor Mortis. Not exactly worth praising. I mean, you listen to it once and you're like pretty okay. You listen to it for the second time and you're like, why would I need it? There is world full of better albums. It's not bad, but it's very, very mediocre and lukewarm experience, and I feel like I'm wasting my time on that, except for doing reviews. So not exactly a good album, but now you know. Then we have this band from Finland called Sepulchral Curse, which kind of always gave me the feeling that this is kind of a side project. Now there is something in common with side projects and EPs. EPs are more often kind of the ones that you do between albums. They're kind of like, okay, we have see these experimental ideas or some leftover songs which just want to put out, but no label wants to put it out an album. So maybe just save those weird tracks or leftover tracks for an EP or for a bonus CD, whatever. And then you just kind of get it over with. And because Sepulchre Curse always kind of struck me as a side project, even though technically speaking, I guess it's not, at least for the main guitar guy, I think it's the only active band these days. But the rest of the guys, I don't know, do they really pay that much, attention, focus, or all that stuff for this release? Because it seems like there are other more important projects, bands for those guys, and the poor guitarist is like only like, hey, this is your band, you do what the fuck you want, we just fill in the gaps. Now, I don't want to be mean and all that stuff, but this Deathbed Sessions EP sounds exactly like that. It's something that you put out between the albums because you kind of had those leftover songs. Now, let's get the best things out of the system before we get ranting. First of all, it's a very diverse release. There are plenty of different kind of guitar leads and melodies and parts that it's like, hey, you really got creative this time. I mean, the basic foundation is dark death metal, but there are parts which could really be, from the more melodic death black trash side of things, like even the kind of give a little bit of a wing towards Destroyer 666 and the like. And then there are parts where it just gets more melodic, and there are parts where it's almost like kind of a death and roll kind of a thing. So lots of things are happening, maybe even too much. And it doesn't even stop with the guitars. There's vocals, which are partly the deep growly vocals, which are done by the same vocalist as Solothus, deep growly vocals. And I think that should be it. But there are screamier parts, which kind of act as a seasoning. Can't really complain about it. I mean, they're not done badly or anything, but they kind of feel like useless. You get my idea. When you have a death metal band, all good growling is all you need. With a black metal band, you don't really need that growling. I mean, it's like you don't really need the different territories. But there are always bands that just want to experiment and can't really complain it. I mean, I've had it with my own bands as well, so I kind of get it. But sometimes less is more. Don't care what Ingrid J. Malmsteen wants to say about it, like more is more. More is always more. Yeah, maybe so, but sometimes you want to just focus on the simple stuff. Like with foods, you don't need every possible seasoning from your cupboard to make it tasty and good. Simple things work. And I think that's one of the problems with Dead Positions. It's almost like you have too many different ideas put into one EP. And when the songs are like 7, 8 minutes, it could be really more focused. Now it seems like the songwriting is little bit off, like too much all over the place, lacking the punch. It's like making weird moves instead of like punching somebody in the jawbone and just like, okay, that was a punch that was gonna drop an elephant. But now it's like more like, let's do some weird slapping movement, like it's a taekwondo on drugs or something. And that when you combine it with this demigod cover track, which is like half the length, you kind of get the point. On top of these different minor flaws or whatever you want to call them, this album doesn't, or EP doesn't really sound strong. The problem is the production. I don't know what led to these guys to do this kind of solution, but it sounds kind of like clumsy and powerless. Some people would say, like Behemoth guy Nergal would say, yeah, I prefer organic sound, and like, you mean like this? Doesn't really, serve the band the proper way. I want to Sepulchral Curse, much like Solothus. I want to feel like they are super heavy. And when they go heavy, they should be like really with the shredding guitars and feel like metal. Now it's like too much this kind of a fuzzy sound. Like, guys, are you trying to do some kind of a sludge thing here? If not, why do you have a sludge guitar sound? I don't get me wrong. There are lots of good ideas here, but it's too much of a mess. It's unfocused, and that's, in my opinion, the main problem with this one. I would say this is for fans only. So if you're a previous Sepulchral Curse fan, you're probably gonna like it, at least to a certain degree. But for casual listeners, I would say go with the full album rather and only come back to this one if you're already a fan. And the last and the best on this pile is very generic by nature. It's Serpentfyre from Finland. And this is a band with now 2 albums out and some smaller releases like EP, single, or what have you. And at first, this baptism of shadows kind of sounds like, okay, this is very generic, melodic black metal, kind of a forgettable, nothing really stands out, until you kind of give it a little bit more listens and it starts to open up a little bit more. And by opening, I mean there are actually some kind of a black trash things, almost like Aura Noir and Gorgoroth having a baby. And the baby is like, hey, I'm doing the horns, you basic melodic black metal riffs go, I don't know, get wasted or something and leave us. The point here is, it's a kind of a good balance between more generic mellow black things with fast tempo and all, and those trashier parts. And because of this, say, variation, diversity, whatever, I think it actually works better than I first give it credit to. I'm not saying this is anything special. It's kind of opposite of that, and the thesis of being special. But this balance between trashier and more melodic riffs actually work quite nicely, and the overall result is pretty good of an album. So far from being like really super good, I would vouch for and all that stuff. But if you're looking for kind of a basic black metal stuff, melodic, but you don't really mind the trashier parts, yeah, why not? I mean, Serpentfyre has a kind of a potential to be something very, very interesting. Now it's still in the works, in my opinion, but it's going to a better direction. So with this information, it's up to you, of course, whether you want to check them out, all the other bands mentioned in this review. So you have it. And the links are, of course, provided in the description box. You do what you must and all that stuff. But this is my order for these 3 underground ones. And should I have sparked your interest, you know what to do. Check those links and give these bands more listen. And I hope you like them. This is Rauta. See you soon with more reviews coming your way.